When you wake up in the morning, have you ever noticed how quickly the world rushes in to tell you who you are? Before your feet touch the floor, before you have even taken your first conscious breath of the day, the voices begin. They whisper the same stories they whispered yesterday and the day before that, and every day since you were small enough to believe that these voices knew better than your own heart. These voices are not evil. They are not trying to harm you. They are simply repeating what they learned, just as you learned to repeat what they taught you. Your parents, your teachers, your friends, the television, the books, the culture around you, all of them speaking the same dream, all of them agreeing on what is real, what is important, what you should become. And you being human, being born into this world already dreaming, learn to dream their dream. This is how it happens for all of us. We arrive in this world as pure awareness, as love itself, with no knowledge of limitation or fear. But the world is already here, waiting for us, full of rules and agreements about how life should be lived. We learn these rules not because we choose them, but because we must learn them to survive, to belong, to be accepted by those whose love we need. Think of a young tree growing in a garden. If you place a wire cage around this tree when it is small, the tree will grow to fit the shape of the cage. Its branches will bend and curve around the metal bars. After many years, you can remove the cage, but the tree will still hold that shape. The cage is gone, but the tree remembers. It has learned to grow in a particular way, and it continues to grow that way, even when it is free to grow differently. This is what happened to you. This is what happened to all of us. We learn to shape ourselves around the agreements that others made about life, about success, about love, about what it means to be human. We learn to seek approval and to fear rejection. We learn to judge ourselves by standards we never chose. We learn to believe that our worth depended on what we accomplished, what we possessed, what others thought of us. Notice how this feels in your body right now. Notice the tightness that comes when you think about not being good enough, not doing enough, not having enough. This tightness is not natural. It is not the truth of who you are. It is the feeling of wearing clothes that do not fit, of trying to live a life that was designed for someone else. The agreements we carry are like invisible chains. We cannot see them, but we feel their weight every day. We feel them when we say yes to things we do not want to do because we are afraid of disappointing others. We feel them when we hide parts of ourselves because we believe those parts are not acceptable. We feel them when we compare ourselves to others and find ourselves lacking. We feel them when we work harder and harder, trying to prove our worth but never feeling like it is enough. These chains were forged in moments when we were too young to question them. A parent's frustrated voice saying, "Why can't you be more like your sister?" It does not ask you to be perfect. It asks you to be authentic. It does not demand that you always succeed. It invites you to always participate. When you are doing your best, there is nothing to regret. Even if the outcome is not what you hoped for, even if you make mistakes, even if others are disappointed, you can rest in the knowledge that you gave what you had to give. This knowledge protects you from the poison of self-judgment and allows you to learn from experience without punishing yourself for being human. Doing your best also means being honest about what your best is in each moment. Sometimes your best includes saying no to requests that would stretch you beyond your capacity. Sometimes your best includes asking for help when you are overwhelmed. Sometimes your best includes resting when your body needs rest, even if your mind thinks you should be productive. The ego wants to make everything about more effort, more achievement, more recognition, more control. But the spirit knows that sometimes the most profound action is no action at all. Sometimes your best is to simply be present, to witness, to allow life to unfold without trying to direct it. These 4 agreements, when practiced together, create a foundation for living from love instead of fear. Every choice you make, every word you speak, every thought you think, every action you take is an expression of either love or fear. Love creates expansion, connection, peace, joy. Fear creates contraction, separation, suffering, conflict. Fear tells you that you are not enough, that there is not enough, that you must protect yourself from a dangerous world. Love tells you that you are already whole, that there is abundance everywhere, that you can trust life to support your highest good. Fear speaks the language of scarcity, competition, judgment. Love speaks the language of abundance, collaboration, Acceptance. Most people live primarily from fear because they were taught to fear. They learned that love is conditional, that safety requires constant vigilance, that others cannot be trusted, that life is fundamentally hostile. These teachings become agreements that shape every aspect of their experience. They approach relationships with fear, careers with fear, their own potential with fear. But fear is not your true nature. Fear is learned, and what is learned can be unlearned. Underneath all your fears, underneath all your agreements, underneath all your stories about who you are and what life means, there is love. Not emotional love that comes and goes, but the love that you are, the love that is the very substance of your being. This love does not need to be created or earned or found. It only needs to be remembered, uncovered, allowed. It is like the sun behind the clouds. The clouds may temporarily hide the sun, but they cannot diminish its light. Your fears, your agreements, your stories may temporarily hide your love, but they cannot touch its essence. Living from love means making choices that align with your deepest truth rather than your surface fears. It means speaking words that heal rather than words that harm. It means seeing others as expressions of the same love that you are, even when they have forgotten this truth about themselves. It means treating yourself with the tenderness you would show to something precious and sacred. When you live from love, you are not trying to get anything from life. You are not trying to prove your worth or secure your safety or control your circumstances. You are simply expressing what you are, sharing what you have been given, participating in the grand dance of existence from your authentic center. This does not mean that challenges disappear or that life becomes easy. It means that you meet challenges from a different place. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "How can I respond to this with love?" Instead of fighting against what is, you look for how you can work with what is. Instead of trying to eliminate all discomfort, you learn to find peace within whatever is present. The path of personal freedom is not a destination you arrive at, but a way of walking through life. It is available to you in every moment, in every breath, in every choice between love and fear. You do not need to wait until you have mastered all the agreements or overcome all your fears or healed all your wounds. You can begin right now, wherever you are, with whatever is in front of you. Personal freedom is not about changing your circumstances, though your circumstances may change as a result of your freedom. It is about changing your relationship to your circumstances. It is about remembering that you are not a victim of life, but a participant in life. It is about recognizing that you have the power to choose your response to whatever life brings. And in that choice lies your freedom. This freedom is not something you achieve once and then possess forever. It is something you choose moment by moment, breath by breath, each time you catch why. Our self-believing an old agreement that no longer serves you, you have an opportunity to choose freedom. Each time you notice yourself taking something personally, you have a chance to step back into your center. Each time you start to make assumptions, you can choose curiosity instead. Each time you begin to judge yourself harshly, you can choose compassion. The beautiful truth is that you do not have to be perfect at this. You do not have to get it right all the time. The path itself is the destination. The walking itself is the arrival. Every step you take toward greater awareness, greater love, greater freedom is a victory worth celebrating. Some days you will feel clear and centered and free. Other days you will feel confused and reactive and bound by old patterns. Both kinds of days are part of the journey. Both kinds of days offer opportunities for growth and awakening. The goal is not to eliminate the difficult days, but to meet all days with the same love, the same presence, the same commitment to truth. You are here for a reason that goes beyond what your mind can understand. You are part of something magnificent, something sacred, something that cannot be reduced to the small stories the world tells about success and failure, about winning and losing, about who matters and who does not. Your very existence is a gift to the world, not because of what you accomplish, but because of what you are. As you walk this path of personal freedom, as you practice these agreements, as you choose love over fear, you're not only healing yourself, you are healing the world. Every moment of authentic presence, every choice for love over fear, every word spoken from truth rather than from old wounds, sends ripples through the collective dream of humanity. You become a light in the darkness, a reminder to others of what is possible when someone chooses to wake up. There is no urgency in this work, no timeline you must follow, no standard you must meet. Life itself will provide all the opportunities you need to practice, to grow, to remember who you really are. Trust the process, trust yourself, trust the love that brought you here, and the love that will guide you home. In this moment, right now, you have everything you need to take the next step on your path. You have awareness, you have choice, you have love. These are the only tools required for the journey toward personal freedom. The rest will unfold naturally as you use these tools with patience, with kindness, with trust in the wisdom that lives within your heart. A teacher's disappointed look when we made a mistake. A friend's laughter when we shared something that mattered to us. These moments taught us to believe certain things about ourselves and about the world. We learned that love must be earned, that we are not safe to be ourselves, that the world is a dangerous place where only the strong survive. But here is what we did not understand then, and what many of us still do not understand now. These were just opinions. They were not the truth. They were the truth of the person who spoke them, colored by their own pain, their own fear, their own agreements about life. But we were small, and they seemed so large, so certain, so knowing. How could we question them? So we made agreements. We agreed that we were not smart enough, not beautiful enough, not worthy enough. We agreed that we had to work harder than everyone else to deserve love. We agreed that the world was lacking, that there was not enough for everyone, that we had to compete and struggle and fight for our place. We agreed to these things not because they were true, but because everyone around us seemed to believe they were true. Now, many years later, we carry these agreements like sacred texts. We refer to them constantly, using them to interpret everything that happens to us. When someone is kind to us, we wonder what they want. When someone is critical, we use it as proof that our worst fears about ourselves are true. When life brings us challenges, we see them as evidence that we are not good enough, not doing enough, not blessed enough. But what if I told you that none of this is real? What if I told you that you are living inside a dream and that everything you believe to be solid and permanent is actually as changeable as the weather? This is the dream of the planet. It is the collective story that humanity tells itself about what life is, what matters, what is possible. It is a powerful dream because so many people believe it. When millions of people agree that something is real, it becomes very convincing. It creates a kind of magnetic field that pulls everyone into the same beliefs, the same fears, the same limitations. The dream of the planet tells us that we are separate from each other, that we must compete for limited resources, that some people are more valuable than others. It tells us that happiness comes from external things, money, success, recognition, the perfect relationship. It tells us that we are bodies with souls rather than souls with bodies. It tells us that death is the end, that love is conditional, that peace is something we must fight for. This dream is so pervasive, so complete, that most people never question it. They live their entire lives inside this dream, believing that it is reality itself. They wake up each morning and put on the clothes of this dream. They speak its language, follow its rules, pursue its goals. They measure their success by its standards and judge their failures by its harsh judgments. But you can step outside this dream. You can wake up not by rejecting the world or running away from life, but by recognizing that what you thought was reality is actually just one possibility among infinite possibilities. The dream of the planet is like a movie playing on a screen. Most people are so absorbed in the movie that they forget they are watching a screen. They believe the movie is real. They laugh and cry and fear and hope as if the characters on the screen were real people living real lives. But you can remember that you are not the movie. You are the one watching. You are the awareness that observes the dream, but you are not limited by the dream. You can choose which movies to watch. You can even choose to turn off the screen and sit in the silence, in the peace that exists before any story begins. This remembering, this awakening, does not happen through thinking. It does not happen through analyzing or understanding or figuring things out. The mind is part of the dream. The mind speaks the language of the dream. To wake up from the dream, you must go beyond the mind into the place that exists before thoughts, before words, before the first agreement was ever made. This place is always here. It is here right now in this moment between these words. It is the space between your thoughts, the silence between your heartbeats, the stillness that remains when everything else falls away. In this place, you remember who you were before you learned who you were supposed to be. In this place, you find the freedom that has always been yours. The awakening begins with a simple recognition. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who observes your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the one who feels your emotions. You are not your beliefs. You are the one who can choose what to believe. This recognition is like a key that unlocks the door of a prison you did not even know you were in when you begin Tao. Oh, observe your thoughts instead of being carried away by them. Something magical happens. You start to see how many of your thoughts are not even your own. They are thoughts you inherited, thoughts you absorb, thoughts that belong to the collective dream. You start to notice how these thoughts create your emotional experience, how they shape your perception of reality, how they determine what you see as possible or impossible. This awareness is gentle. It does not judge or criticize. It simply sees. Like a loving parent watching a child play, it observes without trying to control or change anything. And in this gentle observation, transformation begins to happen naturally. The thoughts that served you continue. The thoughts that cause suffering begin to dissolve, not because you fight them, but because you no longer believe them to be true. You begin to notice how much of your suffering comes not from what is happening, but from your thoughts about what is happening. A difficult conversation becomes unbearable, not because of the words being spoken, but because of your thoughts about what those words mean about you, about your future, about your worth. A mistake becomes a catastrophe, not because of its actual consequences, but because of your thoughts about what it says, about your abilities, your intelligence, your value as a person. But when you step back into awareness, when you remember that you are the observer rather than the observed, everything changes. The difficult conversation is still difficult, but it is not a threat to who you are. The mistake is still a mistake, but it is not evidence of your inadequacy. Life is still life, with all its challenges and changes, but you are no longer a victim of circumstances. You are the conscious creator of your experience. This is the beginning of personal freedom, not freedom from life, but freedom within life. Not the freedom to control everything that happens, but the freedom to choose how you respond to everything that happens. This freedom exists in every moment, in every breath, in every choice between love and fear, between truth and illusion, between presence and the endless stories of the mind. Take a moment now to feel this freedom. Feel the space around your thoughts, the silence beneath your mental chatter. Notice that even as you read these words, there is something in you that is simply witnessing, simply aware, simply present. This something is not troubled by your problems. It is not improved by your successes. It is not diminished by your failures. It simply is, and in its being, it is already free. This freedom invites you to look more closely at the specific agreements you carry, the personal collection of beliefs that make up what we might call your book of law. Every person has such a book, written not by their conscious choice, but by the accumulation of experiences, teachings, and conclusions drawn throughout their life. This book contains all the rules you believe you must follow, all the standards you believe you must meet, all the conditions you believe must be fulfilled for you to be acceptable, lovable, worthy. Open this book gently. There is no need to judge what you find there. These agreements were made by a younger version of yourself, someone who was doing their best to navigate a world that often felt overwhelming and confusing. Some of these agreements may have served you once. They may have helped you feel safe, helped you belong, helped you make sense of things that were too complex for your young mind to understand fully. Perhaps you agreed that you must always be strong, that showing weakness or vulnerability would make you a target for harm. Perhaps you agreed that you must always be helpful, that your worth depends on how much you give to others and how little you ask for yourself. Perhaps you agreed that you must be perfect, that making mistakes is proof of your inadequacy and will result in rejection or abandonment. Notice how these agreements feel in your body. Notice the tension that arises when you think about not living up to them. This tension is the feeling of trying to squeeze your infinite self into the small boxes of these old beliefs. It is like trying to wear clothes you wore as a child. They no longer fit, but you keep trying to wear them because they feel familiar, because they are what you know. Many of these agreements were formed during moments of pain or confusion. A child who is criticized for being too loud may agree that their natural enthusiasm is wrong, that they must become quiet and small to be acceptable. A child who is praised only when they achieve may agree that their worth is conditional, that love must be earned through performance. A child who experiences loss may agree that attachment leads to suffering, that it is safer to keep others at a distance. These agreements made sense at the time. They were survival strategies, ways of adapting to circumstances that felt beyond control. But what served you as a child may not serve you as an adult. What protected you in one situation may now limit you in countless others. The armor that once kept you safe may now be preventing you from experiencing the very love and connection you most deeply desire. Look at your agreements about success, about what it means to be valuable in this world. Notice how many of these agreements come from outside sources, from a culture that measures worth by accumulation, from families that equated love with achievement, from systems that taught you to compete rather than collaborate. These agreements may have motivated you to accomplish things, but at what cost? How often have you achieved what you thought you wanted, only to find that the satisfaction was temporary, that the goalposts had already moved, that there was always another mountain to climb? Look at your agreements about relationships, about what love means and how it should be expressed. Notice how many rules you carry about what you must do to deserve love, what you must become to be worthy of partnership, what you must sacrifice to maintain connection. These agreements often create the very problems they were meant to solve. In trying so hard to be lovable, you may have forgotten how to simply love. In working so hard to avoid rejection, you may have rejected yourself. Look at your agreements about yourself, about your capabilities, your intelligence, your appearance, your worthiness. Listen to the voice in your head that comments constantly on your performance, that compares you to others, that points out your flaws and shortcomings. This voice is not your true voice. It is the voice of your agreements, the internalized critic that learned to speak to you the way others once spoke to you, or the way you heard them speak to themselves. This voice believes it is helping you. It believes that by pointing out your mistakes, it will help you avoid future mistakes. It believes that by reminding you of your limitations, it will keep you safe from disappointment. It believes that by constantly evaluating and judging, it will help you improve and succeed. But notice the effect this voice actually has on your life. Notice how it makes you feel small, anxious, never quite good enough. Notice how it robs you of the present moment by keeping you focused on what is wrong or what might go wrong. The beautiful truth is that you can thank this voice for its efforts and then choose not to listen to it anymore. You can recognize that it was formed by old agreements that no longer serve you. You can begin to speak to yourself differently, to use your voice as a tool of creation rather than destruction, as an instrument of love rather than fear. Your word is one of the most powerful tools you possess. Every word you speak is a force that shapes reality, both your inner reality and the world around you. When you speak, you are not just communicating information. You are casting spells, creating vibrations that affect everything they touch. Your words have the power to heal or to harm, to build up or to tear down, to create connection or separation. Most people are not aware of this power. They speak carelessly, allowing words to flow from old patterns, old emotions, old agreements. They speak from their wounds rather than from their wisdom, from their fears rather than from their love. They use their words to spread gossip, to judge others, to complain about circumstances, to reinforce the very limitations they claim to want to escape. But when you become conscious of your word, when you choose to be impeccable with this sacred tool, everything changes. To be impeccable means to be without sin, and sin in its original meaning simply means to go against yourself, to act in ways that cause you suffering. When you're impeccable with your word, You use it only in the direction of truth and love. You speak from your highest self rather than from your wounded self. This begins with how you speak to yourself. The conversation you have with yourself is the most important conversation of your life because it shapes everything else. If you speak to yourself with criticism, judgment, and harshness, you create an inner environment of tension and suffering. If you speak to yourself with kindness, understanding, and encouragement, you create an inner environment of peace and possibility. Listen to how you speak to yourself when you make a mistake. Listen to the words you use to describe yourself when you are struggling or confused. Would you speak to a beloved friend the way you speak to yourself? Would you treat a child with the harshness you sometimes direct toward your own heart? The way you speak to yourself becomes the foundation for how you experience everything else. When you catch yourself speaking from old agreements, from old patterns of self-judgment, you can pause. You can take a breath. You can choose different words. Not words that deny reality or pretend everything is perfect, but words that come from compassion rather than cruelty, from truth rather than the distortions of old wounds. You can speak to yourself the way a loving parent speaks to a child who is learning, the way a wise teacher speaks to a student who is growing, the way a good friend speaks to someone they care about. You can acknowledge difficulties without making them larger than they are. You can recognize mistakes without making them evidence of your inadequacy. You can honor your feelings without drowning in them. This same consciousness extends to how you speak about others. When you speak about another person, you are not just describing them. You are creating them in your mind and in the minds of those who listen to you. If you speak of others with judgment, criticism, or malice, you strengthen those qualities in yourself and in the world. If you speak of others with understanding, compassion, and love, you strengthen those qualities instead. Notice how it feels in your body when you engage in gossip, when you speak negatively about someone who is not present. Notice the heaviness, the contraction, the way it diminishes your own light. This is your inner wisdom telling you that you are using your word against yourself, that you are creating poison rather than medicine. But notice how it feels when you speak well of others, when you see and acknowledge their good qualities, when you refuse to participate in conversations that tear people down. Notice the lightness, the expansion, the way it connects you to your own goodness. This is your inner wisdom confirming that you are using your word in service of love. Being impeccable with your word does not mean being perfect with your word. It means being conscious, being intentional, being willing to take responsibility for the energy you put into the world through your speech. It means recognizing that your words matter, that they have consequences, that they are tools of creation rather than just sounds that come out of your mouth. This awareness naturally leads to the second agreement. Don't take anything personally. When you understand the power of words, when you become conscious of how your own words are shaped by your agreements, your fears, and your wounds, you begin to understand that the words others speak are shaped by their agreements, their fears, and their wounds. Nothing anyone says about you is really about you. It is about them. It is about their dream, their story, their interpretation of life filtered through their own experiences and beliefs. When someone speaks to you with anger, they are speaking from their own pain. When someone speaks to you with love, they are speaking from their own capacity for love. When someone judges you, they are using the same measuring stick they used to judge themselves. This understanding can free you from the prison of other people's opinions. How much of your emotional energy do you spend trying to manage what others think of you? How often do you change your behavior, your appearance, your choices based on what you imagine others might think? How many times have you been hurt by words that had nothing to do with who you actually are? The person who criticizes you is looking at you through the lens of their own insecurities. The person who rejects you is responding from their own fears about connection and vulnerability. The person who tries to control you is acting from their own need to feel safe in an uncertain world. None of this is really about you, even though it may be directed toward you. This does not mean that you become cold or uncaring. It does not mean that you dismiss all feedback or refuse to consider how your actions affect others. It means that you stop allowing other people's emotions and opinions to determine your worth, your peace, your sense of self. It means that you respond to others from your own center rather than reacting from your wounds. When someone is angry with you, you can listen without absorbing their anger into your body. When someone disapproves of your choices, you can hear their perspective without abandoning your own inner knowing. When someone tries to make you responsible for their happiness, you can maintain compassion without accepting a burden that was never yours to carry. This freedom allows you to love more fully because you are no longer loving from need or fear. You are not trying to get others to see you a certain way or treat you a certain way. You are simply offering your authentic self, knowing that how they receive it says more about them than it does about you. You can be generous with your love because you are not dependent on getting love back in a particular form or quantity. This freedom from taking things personally creates space for the third agreement. Don't make assumptions. How much suffering in your life comes not from what actually happens, but from the stories you create about what might be happening. How often do you build elaborate explanations for other people's behavior, complete with motivations, intentions, and meanings that exist only in your imagination? The mind loves to fill in gaps. When someone doesn't return your call immediately, the mind creates a story. When your partner seems distant, the mind writes a narrative. When your boss speaks to you briefly in passing, the mind constructs an entire drama about what this might mean. These stories feel real because the mind is so convincing, so creative, so committed to having an explanation on for everything. But notice what happens to your peace when you believe these stories. Notice how quickly you can move from a simple, neutral event to a state of anxiety, hurt, or anger based entirely on something you imagined. The person who didn't return your call might have been dealing with a family emergency. Your partner might have been processing something completely unrelated to you. Your boss might have been focused on an urgent matter that had nothing to do with their feelings about you. We make assumptions because the unknown feels uncomfortable. We would rather have a story, even a painful one, than live with uncertainty. We would rather know, even if what we think we know is completely wrong, than rest in the space of not knowing. But this preference for false certainty over authentic uncertainty costs us our peace, our relationships, and our connection to reality. The medicine for assumptions is simple but not always easy. Ask questions, seek clarity, communicate directly. Instead of creating a story about what someone meant, ask them what they meant. Instead of assuming you know why someone acted a certain way, inquire about their experience. Instead of building a case about someone's intentions, invite them to share their actual intentions with you. This requires courage because it makes you vulnerable. It is safer to stay in your assumptions, to remain in the protection of your stories, than to risk discovering that your interpretation was wrong. It is easier to be hurt by your imagination than to possibly be hurt by reality. But the hurt that comes from truth is clean pain. It is pain that can be worked with, pain that leads somewhere. The hurt that comes from assumptions is toxic pain. It poisons everything it touches because it is based on lies. When you stop making assumptions, your relationships become cleaner, more honest, more real. You stop reacting to things that never actually happened. You stop protecting yourself from threats that exist only in your mind. You start responding to what is actually present, rather than what you imagine might be present. This practice extends beyond your interactions with others to your relationship with life itself. How many assumptions do you make about what you need to be happy? How many stories do you tell yourself about what certain events mean about your future? How often do you interpret a challenge as evidence that you are on the wrong path, or a success as proof that you are finally worthy? Life is always speaking to you, but it speaks in its own language, not in the language of your assumptions. When you stop imposing your interpretations on life's messages, you can begin to hear what is actually being communicated. You can begin to dance with life rather than wrestling with your ideas about life. The fourth agreement flows naturally from the first three. Always do your best. But what does it mean to do your best? Your best is not a fixed standard. It changes from moment to moment, from day to day, depending on your energy, your health, your circumstances, your emotional state. Your best when you are rested and peaceful is different from your best when you are tired, irate and stressed. Your best when you are learning something new is different from your best when you are doing something familiar. To always do your best means to give what you have to give in each moment without holding back and without pushing beyond what is authentic. It means neither laziness nor perfectionism. It means showing up fully to your life without the need to prove anything to anyone, including yourself. Most people either do too much or too little. They either push themselves beyond their limits, trying to meet impossible standards, or they hold back, afraid of making mistakes, afraid of being seen, afraid of failing. Both of these approaches come from the same root, the belief that your worth depends on your performance. When you truly understand that your worth is inherent, that it cannot be increased by success or decreased by failure, you are free to simply do your best without attachment to the results. You can give your full effort without needing to control the outcome. You can engage completely with what is in front of you without making it about your identity. This agreement is deeply compassionate because it acknowledges that you are human, that you have limitations, that you are learning and growing and changing.